Hello and welcome to Nithrania Game Club. My name is Branislav Berec and you're watching Game in a Nutshell, the series of videos designed to teach how to play various board games. Today, we're going to learn how to play Tainted Grail, one of the most anticipated games of 2019, designed by Krzysztof Piskorski and Marcin Swierkot and published by Awakened Realms. So, let's get started. When starting a new campaign, all players have to pick their character tile and the character tray. Usually, the character tile and the tray have the matching color. This new character can be used with any tray. Then flip the character tile to the other side and mark these starting attributes on the character tray. These attributes are combat attributes and these are diplomatic attributes. Then mark the starting positions on these survival tracks. Locate the spot with these red chevrons and place the markers on the energy track and terror track and this T-shaped marker onto the health track. Then look at the starting resources and place the markers to the respective sections on the character tray. Each red marker is worth 1 resource. These purple markers are worth 5 resources. With that, you can turn this character tile to the other side, which depicts the character's special action and a special ability. Now take the deck of 80 cards that correspond to the color of your character. You can tell the color of the cards by looking at these vertical lines and also by this letter next to the card number. B stands for brown. There are 40 cards in the combat deck and 40 cards in the diplomacy deck. Take the combat deck and notice that it contains 15 cards with the character name and then 25 cards without the character name. Now take the cards without the character name and cards numbered 1 to 15 have this banner in the top right corner. Take these 15 cards and they will be your starting combat deck. Now take all the remaining cards numbered 16 to 25 and then take all 15 cards with the character name. And these cards will form your combat advancement pool. So you will have 15 cards in your starter combat deck and then 25 cards in your advancement pool. Shuffle both decks and place this combat advancement pool card on top of your advancement pool. Then prepare the diplomacy starter deck and the diplomacy advancement pool in the exact same way as the combat decks. Since these attributes are combat attributes, you can place your combat decks on the left side of your tray and the decks of diplomacy cards to the right side of your tray next to your diplomacy attributes. Then you can read the introductory letter for your character, and you can also take this map of Avalon, which might be very helpful, especially in the beginning of the game. Now it's time to set up the world. Take the starting location card, and for Fall of Avalon it's the card 101, and then build the starting section of the map. Check these direction keys and the numbers next to those keys, and attach those cards to the starting location. Since the starting location has this Menhir symbol, place this Menhir statue onto the starting location card and place this dial in the Menhir slot. Set the starting number of the dial based on the number of players in the game. Because I'm setting up a 3-player game here, the starting number should be 6. Then place the miniatures of all the characters on this starting location as well. Then take this Chapter 1 setup card and prepare the event deck following the instruction on the card. Find all these event cards for the Chapter 1 and stack them from Part 1, which is on the top, to the Part 6, which is on the bottom of the deck. Then take this setup card and flip it to the back side. Now, following the instruction on the card, build your encounter decks based on the number of players. First, sort the encounter decks by their color, and each deck contains cards with the 4 difficulty levels, with difficulty number 4 being the most difficult encounters. Now, based on the instruction on the Chapter 1 setup card, if you play a solo game, only take the encounter cards with the difficulty level 1. If you play a 2, 3 or 4 player game, take all the cards with difficulty level 1 and 2. Put the remaining cards back into the box. Then shuffle each deck, and if this is your first game, you may consider adding these Your First Encounter cards on top of each deck. Then continue reading the instructions on the setup card, which includes discarding the card at the end of the setup and flipping the first card of the event deck face up. Because it's a quest card, place it face up somewhere next to the map so that all players can see it, and this card will remain in play until you complete that quest. Finally, shuffle this deck of item cards and also prepare these secret cards, but do not shuffle them, keep them sorted by their number. Take one fresh save sheet, which contains all these game statuses on its other side, distribute the help cards to all players, and you're ready to go. Tainted Grail is played in rounds, which are basically days. Each day is split into 3 parts. At the start of the day, these dials on menhirs will be reduced by 1. They indicate the number of days menhirs will stay active and protect the surrounding area. Then the new event card will be drawn for the day, and if there will be any guardians on the map, they would move now. Then during the day, players will perform actions, and this is the main phase of the game. Players will be able to travel, discover new locations, explore locations, and take actions on these location cards. They can also take player-specific actions and also activate menhirs. Then at the end of the day, players will need to eat food to restore their energy and health and reduce the terror. They will also have a chance to raise their attributes and improve their decks. At the start of the very first day, you will have to reduce the dial on the menhir. Then reveal the top card from the event deck and follow the instruction on that card. If it contains a quest, it will remain on the table until the quest is completed. If it doesn't contain a quest, it will only remain active until the end of the current day. If the event card instructs you to add random events on top of the event deck, take the cards from the random events and place them on top of the event deck. During the day, players will take turns in some sort of mini rounds, and they can take their turns in any order they want. Players can perform actions individually, or 2 or more characters together can perform actions as a party. Once all players have taken one action, another mini round starts, and again each player will perform another action in any player order, individually or as a party. When players don't want to or cannot take any more actions, they would pass, and once all players have passed, the day is over. The game would proceed to the end of the day, but now I will describe all the actions you can take during the day. On your turn, you can perform one action. You can find a brief overview of all these actions on this Action Overview help card. To perform an action, you have to spend some energy. Each action has some energy requirements, and when you pay the energy, simply move the marker on this energy track down. And by the way, anytime you have to pay or lose energy or health, or even lose terror, move the markers down. Anytime you gain energy, gain health, or gain terror, move the markers up. When you gain resources, put them into the corresponding section on your character tray. Then you have to fully resolve one action before you take another action. When you take the Explore action on the location card, you can flip the cards to the other side, read the text and follow the instructions. Usually it will refer you to the exploration journal, either to a specific verse or to the general page of this location card. If you feel that flipping the location isn't very practical, like exploring this central location, you may go directly to the exploration journal, to the page with the location number. This text is the exact same text as on the location card. Before playing the game, I would strongly recommend to read this "What is the Exploration Journal" section. However, to give you a quick overview, anytime you explore the location, find that location page in the Exploration Journal, read and follow the basic instructions, and if possible, only read the verses you have been directed to by the instructions. If there's any requirement in the text, if you are alone, you have to meet that requirement. If you take the Explore action as a party, and if at least one of those characters meets these conditions, consider those requirements as fulfilled. Some verses tell you to roll a die and use the values of the attributes. If you take that action as a party, only use the highest attribute level of one character. Do not add attributes from multiple characters. When decoding these kind of secrets, place 3 dials in exact same positions as depicted in this secret, and then read the numbers at the bottom of these dials. So in this case, the verse will take you to the secret number 215. Go to the Book of Secrets section, find the corresponding verse, and then follow the text. Anytime you see the exploration ends, flip the card back to its standard side and the exploration action ends. When you take the Explore action as a party, all party members have to pay 1 energy. When you take the Travel action, you can move from one location card to another adjacent location card. You can only move orthogonally, you may never move diagonally. In addition, you always have to follow these direction keys. So, even though these 2 cards are adjacent next to each other, there is no direction key here. That means this character may not move onto this card. When you arrive on the location card, if not yet revealed, you can reveal new locations. Again, check these direction keys and the numbers next to these keys, and then add these location cards to the map. However, these new location cards have to be connected to at least one active menhir, and they can be connected either orthogonally or also diagonally. That's why this location card cannot be placed over here because it's too far away from an active menhir. Since you can only reveal the locations which are connected with these direction keys, after arriving in this location, this character was not able to reveal this location because there's no direction key here, even though that location would be connected to an active menhir. This location can only be revealed from this card. When you take the Travel action and you arrive on the location card with this lightning symbol, resolve the effect immediately. If the location card would contain any encounter, resolve that encounter first and then resolve the effect next to the lightning symbol of the location. When you take the Travel action as a party, each member of the party has to pay the travel cost, and then they have to face the encounter together and also resolve the effect of the location together. When you take the location action, the cost of the action is depicted on the location card, and obviously you can only take this action when you are present in that location. When the location action can be performed only once per day, after taking that action, you may place this time token on the location card to mark that the action has been already taken. When you take the location action as a party, pay that cost only one time. Do not pay the cost for each character. So in this case, it only costs 2 energy. You can split the cost among the members of the party any way you want, and then you also get that reward only one time. So only 2 food in this case. You can split that reward any way you want. However, when you have to face the encounter, you have to face it together. Each character has a special action which that character can perform on their turn. When that character is member of a party, the cost of the action can be split among other characters, but the active character must spend at least 1 energy. If the location card contains this menhir seal, you can inspect that menhir. It's a free action. You can flip that card and you can inspect the menhir and to see what resources you will need to activate this menhir. Again, instead of flipping the card, you can also take a look into the exploration journal. Then, if you have all the resources and if you meet all the criteria, you can activate that menhir immediately. If you have no more energy, or if you don't want to spend more energy, for example to avoid becoming exhausted, you can pass. It's a free action, but after that you will not be able to take any more actions this day. At the end of the day, you need to rest. You need to eat 1 food, and if you do, you can restore 1 point of health and you can lose 1 point of terror. If you don't have any food, or if you have food but you don't want to spend that food, you need to drop your energy down to 0. If you don't spend any food and your energy is already at 0, you have to lose 1 health. When there are more characters in the same location, they can freely trade food and wealth with each other. Then in the second step, restore your energy. Place the marker back into the starting position, and don't forget, as indicated by this red-shaped T marker, you can never have more energy than health. So in this case, when you restore energy, you can only place your marker to the spot number 5 on your energy track. If your energy marker is in the red area, which means you are exhausted, you can restore maximum 4 points of energy. So from the space number 1, you can go maximum to space number 5. Then in the third step, you can advance your character by spending experience points. You can either advance your attributes or you can advance your dex. For every 2 experience points you spend, you can advance 1 deck 1 time. Draw the top 3 cards from the advancement deck, choose one of those cards and add it to your deck, and shuffle the remaining 2 cards back into the advancement deck. Then shuffle the standard deck as well. Then each character has 3 pairs of opposing attributes. When you decide to advance one of those attributes, first count the number of existing points in that pair. In this example, the middle pair already contains 2 attribute points. If there are no markers, no points in one pair of attributes, it costs 2 experience points to add the first attribute. The price for adding the second point into the pair of attributes would be 4 experience points. Adding the third attribute point would cost 6 experience points. Adding the fourth one would cost 8 experience points, and adding any other points beyond 4 would always cost 10 experience points. If you have any attribute with 2 attribute points, and you decide to add the third one, you can choose one of the available skill cards and attach it to the attribute. Choose any of the cards available, and because these cards are double-sided, when taking the card, you have to choose one of the sides and only use this side of the card until the end of the entire campaign. Each skill card counts as 1 attribute point, so this pair of attributes already has 4 points, and the bottom pair of the attributes already contains 3 points. Then in the next step, you can modify your decks. Each deck must contain at least 15 cards. And if you already have more than 15 cards in your deck, you can decide to take some of those cards out and keep them in some sort of a reserve while still keeping at least 15 cards in the deck. Do not put these cards that you take out into the advancement deck. These are the cards that you already own, you just decide to swap them out for the time being. Anytime later in the game, you can swap in and out any cards you own, as long as you have at least 15 cards in your deck. Obviously, this applies to both of your decks. Then, at the very end of the day, if you are in a location with this dream seal, you have to experience a dream. Find the corresponding location in the exploration journal and read the section with the dream. If you are going insane, which means the value of your terror track is in this red section, instead of the dream, read the nightmare and apply any effects. Now, with the game in progress, let's go through the full start of the day procedure. If there are any menhirs with no dial, they go dark and you have to remove them from the map. Now, discard any locations which are outside of the range of existing active menhirs. Remember, active menhir protects locations which are 1 space away orthogonally or diagonally. So in our example, these 3 locations are out of range and you have to discard them. If there are any characters on such discarded locations, those characters have to lose 2 health and gain 2 terror points. Then the characters have to move to the nearest remaining location, and again you have to follow the direction keys, and in case there are multiple locations with the same distance away from the destroyed location, choose the location with the lowest number. Then in the second step, reduce the dials on all other remaining menhirs. If you would have to reduce the dial which shows number 1, remove that dial instead, but don't remove the menhir yet. If he doesn't get activated, he will get removed at the start of the next day. Then in the next step, remove these time tokens and time dials, for example from the locations which have any once per day activations. Then reveal and read the next event card. These cards usually last until the end of the day. Then move the Guardians. Guardians are roaming encounters which have not been defeated. Roll the Guardian die and move it in the direction indicated by the die. So in this case, the Guardian has to move to the west. That means that this Guardian would have to move from this location to an unrevealed location. In that case, or in case the Guardian would have to move in the direction which is not connected with the direction keys, move the Guardian from the existing location to the highest numbered connected location. If the location contains no characters, then nothing happens. If the Guardian would move into a location with another character or characters, the encounter would be immediately triggered. In case you roll an empty face, the Guardian stays where it is. In case the Guardian stays in the location and that location contains a character, again the encounter is immediately triggered. If you roll this X symbol, the Guardian is destroyed. Flip the Guardian card face down and place it on the bottom of the corresponding deck. Finally, you have to equip for the current day. Each player can have unlimited number of items and secrets. However, some of these items have the keyword on top of the card. There are 5 specific keywords: weapon, relic, companion, armor and shield, and you can only equip one item with the same keyword. So you cannot carry 2 weapons or have 2 companions. Flip the items that you don't want to use today face down, and at the start of the next day you can change your mind and choose different items for the day. When resolving the gray, green and purple encounters, they end up in a combat. Blue encounters are diplomatic encounters. To demonstrate the combat, let me use one of the Your First Encounter cards. During the combat, you will place markers into the combat pool next to the encounter card. You need to collect as many markers as the value of the encounter, which is depicted next to the name of the card. Players will use their combat cards, and they will place these combat cards to the right of the encounter card, creating a sequence. To start the combat, place the encounter card on the table. Check the traits of the encounter card, because some of those traits may take effect immediately. You can find a brief description of all these traits on the help card and more detailed description in the rulebook. Then choose the equipment for the combat. If for any reason you don't want to use some of your items, simply set those items aside. Then all characters involved in the encounter will draw 3 cards from their combat decks. In case there are 4 characters involved in the combat, each character would only draw 2 cards. After drawing your initial hand, if you don't like that hand, you can completely discard these cards and draw new hand with 1 fewer card. If you wish so, you can repeat the procedure until you have minimum 1 card in your hand. Now it's time for a full combat turn. First of all, pick the active character. You can choose those characters in any order you want. So let's say we start with Bjor. Active character can start playing cards from their hand. The first card they play doesn't have to meet any special requirements. After playing the card, check if any of these keys connect. The key on the bottom of the card is a free key and it always connects. Check the icon on the left side and then gain the bonus on the right side. So in this case it is 2 combat markers, which are placed into the combat pool. Then, to connect these red keys, not only you have to connect the left side with the right side, the active character also has to have the corresponding attribute level, which means in this case 1 aggression. Looking at the Bjorn's attributes, he has 2 points of aggression, so he fulfills the requirement. So, since this key is also connected, Bjorn receives another marker, which is then added to the combat pool. Then, if the card has any abilities, resolve those abilities now. The top section of this ability would be activated during the enemy attack, and the bottom section tells me to place a time token on the card. This is a so-called delayed ability, and it will be triggered at the start of the next activation. Now, the active character can play additional cards. However, in order to place additional card, you have to make sure that you connect this bonus action icon. So if Bjorn would decide to play the additional card, align it with the previous card, this time token would be discarded without triggering the effect, and now we have 3 keys which are linked together. Looking at the red link, Bjorn has the 1 point of courage required, so this link is connected, which means Bjorn receives this bonus action, and that means placing this card is legal. Then, to activate this blue link, the magic link, the active character has to pay 1 magic. And since Bjorn doesn't have any magic points, this magic link, although attached together, doesn't connect. So Bjorn doesn't get this bonus. However, the bottom link, the free link, again connected, which means as a bonus, Bjorn can draw additional card from his combat deck. Now, this fast trait means that characters can play maximum 2 cards per activation, so the Bjorn's turn is over. You have to check for the victory now, which means compare the number of markers in the combat pool with the encounter value, and if the enemy hasn't been defeated yet, the enemy will respond using this table over here. The enemy reaction depends on the number of markers in the combat pool. So in this case we have 3 markers, and as this table indicates, the active character has to suffer 2 damage, but this ability indicates that it prevents 1 damage. So instead of 2 damage, the active character will only suffer 1 damage. Reduce the health value by 1 point, and then, as the small table indicates, lose 1 marker from the combat pool. With that, the first activation is over. Give this time token to the character whose activation has been just completed. And now, if there are any other characters who have not been activated this turn, choose one of those characters for activation. So, it is Magot's turn now, and again, he can start playing cards, and the first card doesn't have to meet any requirements. So, he can decide to play this card, and again, there are 2 keys which are connected. The bottom one is free and connects every time, which means Magot adds another marker to the combat pool. And to check this red key, we have to look at the Magot's attributes again. Magot does have at least 1 point of aggression, which means this key connects as well, and that is another marker to the combat pool. Now, the top ability of this card would be triggered during the enemy attack, and for the bottom ability we have to place another time token. Now, the active character can play additional cards, assuming those cards would connect using these bonus action icons. Magot can take another card, again add it to the sequence, and the token from the previous card would be discarded without taking the effect. And now we have to make sure at least one of these bonus action icons connects. Now we have this magic key linked, and Magot also has the magic points, so he has to spend 1 magic point, place it on the link, which means the link is connected. That means it is legal to place this card into the sequence. However, there is no other benefit, because even though the bottom key connects, there's no bonus. However, the last card in a sequence would prevent 2 damage from the enemy attack, and again we have to place another time token onto this card. With that, Magot's turn is over, and now it's time for the enemy response. Looking at the number of markers in the pool, there are 4 markers, which triggers this response, which gives 2 damage to the active character, but this card prevents 2 damage, so there's no damage at all, and the ability continues with losing 1 marker from the combat pool. Give the time token to the character whose activation has been just completed. And now, since there is no other character which would not be activated this turn, the entire combat turn is over. All characters would have to discard down to 3 cards and then draw 1 more additional card. Remove the time tokens from the characters and you can start the new turn. At the start of the next turn, again, you have to pick the active character. You can pick them in any order you want, but let's say we will start with Bjorn again. First of all, any delayed abilities are triggered, which means we have to remove this time token and the active character can draw the card. So that's another card for Bjorn. Now Bjorn can start playing the cards from their hand, and when playing this card, again, because it's the first card of the activation, it doesn't have to meet any requirements. And in this case, the top key connects, which means Bjorn adds another marker to the combat pool. And the bottom key, the free key, connects as well, which means the bonus is doubled, and that is another 2 markers to the combat pool. Since the combat pool contains enough markers to win this encounter, Bjorn decides to end the turn, and both characters defeated the enemy. Take the loot, which is on the bottom of the encounter card, in this case 2 food, which you can distribute among the characters any way you want. All characters take all their cards from play and from the discard pile and shuffle these cards back into their combat decks, and the encounter card is placed on the bottom of the corresponding encounter deck. Now let's take a look at the additional rules for encounters. When during the combat the new character becomes activated and that character for any reason decides not to play any cards at all, the enemy resolves this opportunity attack. Resolve the effect immediately, and then the active character would draw 1 card from their combat deck. After that, perform the regular enemy attack based on the number of markers in the combat pool. One of the options for the opportunity attack is to run away. You can also find this keyword as one of the options of the regular enemy attack. When this option is triggered, the enemy, runs away. That means the encounter ends immediately. Players don't get any loot or rewards because this is not winning the encounter. And the encounter card is placed to the bottom of the corresponding encounter deck. The enemy is not the only one who can run away from the combat. At any time during the player's activation, that player can decide to escape. The character has to lose 1 energy, then trigger the opportunity attack of your enemy, and after that the combat is over. Shuffle all your combat cards and place the encounter card to the bottom of the corresponding deck. If the active character is member of the party which is involved in the combat, and the active character decides to escape from the combat, again that character has to lose 1 energy, then the opportunity attack is triggered and the character leaves the combat. However, keep the cards from that character in the sequence. They will be shuffled back into their deck at the end of the combat. Remaining characters continue the combat normally. When the active character is instructed to lose the markers from the combat pool, but there are no markers in the combat pool, the active character has to discard the cards from their hand instead. In case that character has no more cards in hand, they have to discard the cards from their combat deck. Then, when the active character has to draw the cards from their combat deck and the deck does not contain sufficient number of cards, the active character must escape from the combat. Anytime the character's terror is higher than the character's health, that character is in panic. Anytime that character is activated during the encounter, instead of playing the first card from their hand, they play the first card from top of their deck. Then they can continue normally playing additional cards from their hand. However, at the end of the turn, that character does not draw additional card from the deck. When your health drops down to 0, you are dying. When there are multiple characters in the game, take this "You are dying" co-op card and follow the instructions of that card. If you play solo with one character, take this card instead, and again follow the instructions on the other side of the card. Blue encounters are not combat encounters, they are diplomatic encounters. Since these diplomatic encounters resolve in the exact same way as the combat encounters, I will only explain the small differences. First of all, characters use their diplomacy decks instead of the combat decks. Then, the encounter doesn't have any value, instead it has this affinity track. Place the marker to this gray spot, and to win the encounter, you have to get this marker to the top spot of this affinity track. If the marker gets to the lowest spot, you fail this encounter. Some of the encounters give you the option to avoid the encounter completely. If you decide to use this ability, you have to meet the requirements and pay the price, and then place the encounter card on the bottom of the corresponding deck. You can only avoid the encounter before you start the encounter, and if you are in the party, all party members have to pay the price, and when checking the requirements, take only one character and check the character with the highest value of that attribute. If that attribute meets the requirements, it is considered that the entire party meets the requirement. Then, when you add cards, anytime you connect this upward arrow symbol, you can move the marker one space up on the affinity track. Anytime you successfully connect this symbol, check the meaning of that symbol on the encounter card, and in this case, again, you can move the marker on the affinity track one space up. Then during the enemy activation, check this symbol, and in this case, you have to move the marker one space down, and this symbol indicates that you have to discard the last card from the sequence. Don't forget that for these keys to connect, the active character must have the corresponding attributes. When you successfully move the marker to the top spot of the affinity track, you win the active stage, and if it's the only stage of the encounter card, you win the encounter. Take the reward listed on the encounter card, shuffle your entire diplomacy deck, and place the encounter card on the bottom of the encounter deck. If the encounter card has multiple stages, when you successfully complete first stage, if you wish so, you can place a marker on the encounter card as a reminder that you have already completed one stage, then reset the marker to the gray spot again and start the next stage. If you end your activation after completing a stage, do not trigger the enemy response. Then, when you successfully complete the second stage as well, you win the encounter. Notice that the meanings of these symbols when they connected may be different during each stage. The same applies for enemy activation. Then, in case the marker drops to the lowest spot on the affinity track, you lose the encounter. Apply the failure from the encounter card, shuffle your affinity deck, and place the encounter card on the bottom of the deck. The same applies when you decide to escape the encounter. Simply apply the failure effect and end the encounter. All other rules are the same as during the combat encounters. Tainted Grail is a long campaign and you will have to save it from time to time. The best time to save the game is after completing a chapter. First, start by saving all the player stats. Take one of these save sheets and record all the values from your character tray, from the survival tracks, mark the numbers of any potential skill cards, item cards or secret cards. Then record the position of all menhirs in the game, their location and the value of their dial. Also make notes of any active quests and dials, their locations and the values on their dials, and also the current location of any guardians on the map. Then you can take all the models and put them back into the box. Take all the location cards which are currently revealed on the map and separate them from all unrevealed locations with this separator. Place the revealed locations on top of the deck And now you can place these cards as they are back into the box. Do the same thing with the encounter decks. Take all the cards which have not been put into the game yet, use this saved encounters separator, and place the encounter cards which are already in play on top of this deck. Now you can place these cards back into the box. Finally, save any active quests and other event cards from the deck using this saved events card. Then save your cards using these advancement pool separators. So you can take the combat cards together, then put them on top of the diplomacy cards, and take all the items and place them on top of the cards as well. Then take the entire deck of cards and put them into one of the save compartments in the box. When you restore the game and you have to remove one character from the game, all you have to do is to distribute any secret cards of that character amongst other players. Then you can continue the game normally. When you want to add another character into the game, perform the standard setup for that character, and that character would start in the same location as one of the other characters in the game. Over the course of the game, you will be asked to mark or check the status. You mark the statuses on this status save sheet, and these statuses are game statuses, they're not personal. They impact the entire world, so all characters have these statuses. When you need to draw an item with a specific keyword like a companion, keep drawing the item cards until you find a card with that specific keyword. When you find that card, take it into your possession. Shuffle all other cards back into the deck. Secret cards are story-related objects and they can never be discarded, sold or lost in any other way. Although some of these cards may be item cards, when you are instructed to discard an item, you may never discard a secret item. When you gain too much terror, you can get insane. Take this "You're Going Insane" card and follow the instructions. When your health drops to 0, you have to take this "You Are Dying" card and follow the instructions, and if you're not careful, your character may die. When that happens, the rulebook contains several options what you can do. You can either take a new character and start playing with the new character, or you can call for the All-Mother's mercy. In any case, I will leave it up to you to decide what kind of approach you will take for going through the game, and so you can find these brief instructions in the rulebook. The rulebook also comes with alternatives how to make this game even more challenging or for a completely free play. Again, I will leave it up to you to go through these options. So that's how you play Tainted Grail. These are all the rules you need to start playing the game. If you would have any questions or comments, I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. You can also find a lot of questions and answers on the Board Game Geek page. It already contains hundreds and hundreds of threads in the forums. If you like this series, if you like the show, please subscribe. My name is Branislav Berec and hope to see you next time.